Once, in a distant village, lived an elderly man named Ekon. Although he wasn't wealthy, he had a beautiful and joyful family. He was a diligent farmer, but he didn't own his farm. Instead, he worked on others' farms, ensuring his wife and children were always content despite their modest means. Ekon's wife was a lovely woman who sold fruits and vegetables at the market. Every morning, she prepared her goods with a smile, supporting her family with her earnings. Ekon and his wife had 3 children, 2 sons and a lovely daughter. Their home, though not rich in material possessions, was filled with love and happiness. After long days of work, Ekon would return home tired but satisfied. His wife would welcome him with a warm meal, and their children would run to greet him. They would spend their evenings sharing laughter and stories, cherishing their simple yet fulfilling life. Ekon had many friends in the village, but they were all wealthier than he was. Over time, these friends began to drift away, not wanting to associate with someone as poor as Ekon. Although this saddened him, he reminded himself that his family's happiness was what truly mattered. One day, there was a significant gathering in the village. Ekon decided to attend, hoping to reconnect with his old friends. Upon arriving, he saw his friends enjoying themselves, eating, drinking, and laughing together. They welcomed him warmly at first, inviting him to join their meal. However, after they finished eating, one friend stood up and said, "Ekon, since you're not as wealthy as we are, you should clean up the plates." Ekon was stunned. He replied, "We're all friends, and I'm older than all of you. Just because I'm not as rich doesn't mean you can treat me this way. Everyone should clean up their own plate." His friends laughed and said, "If you don't clean the plates, we'll tell the seller that you haven't paid, which will be even more embarrassing for you." Left with no choice, Ekon cleaned the plates and departed from the gathering, feeling deeply humiliated. As he walked home, he thought about how unjustly he had been treated. Upon reaching home, his wife noticed his unhappiness and asked, "Ekon, what happened?" Ekon sighed and explained, "My friends treated me poorly today because I'm not as wealthy as they are. But it doesn't matter. I'll always do my best for you and our children." Ekon continued to work hard every day, regardless of how his friends treated him. His determination to ensure his family's happiness kept him going. Ekon was known throughout the village for his hard work. He toiled on various farms, never owning one himself. He spent long hours in the hot sun, planting and harvesting crops. Sometimes the people he worked for would delay his payment, saying, "Come back tomorrow, Ekon." Even then, when he returned, they still wouldn't pay him. Wealthier friends often exploited Ekon, asking him to perform demeaning tasks like washing their clothes or cleaning their houses. One day, when Ekon asked a friend for money to buy food for his family, the friend laughed and said, "If you want money, you must clean my house and wash my clothes." Feeling humiliated, Ekon agreed because he needed to provide for his family. He spent the entire day cleaning and washing, only to be paid a meager sum much less than he deserved, but he accepted it without complaint. Another time, Ekon worked from sunrise to sunset on a friend's farm. He worked tirelessly, but when it was time to be paid, his friend said, "I don't have the money right now. Come back next week." Frustrated, Ekon had no choice but to accept this, as he needed the work to support his family. Despite the unfair treatment, Ekon never gave up. He rose early each day and went to work, driven by the desire to provide for his family and ensure they had enough to eat and a roof over their heads. As harvest season approached, Ekon saw an opportunity to earn some money. He decided to approach Chief Azuka, the wealthiest man in the village, who owned the largest farm. Ekon hoped that working for Chief Azuka would allow him to better provide for his family. Early one morning, Ekon went to Chief Azuka's house and respectfully greeted him. "Good morning, Chief Azuka. I would like to help with the harvest on your farm. My 2 sons can assist as well." Chief Azuka agreed, saying, "Very well, Ekon. My farm is large and I need all the help I can get. You can start tomorrow." The next day, Ekon and his sons woke up before dawn and headed to Chief Azuka's farm, working tirelessly under the hot sun. They picked crops and placed them in large sacks, working through heavy rain with determination to complete the harvest on time. Ekon's sons were strong and hard-working like their father, making a great team. Day after day, they labored on Chief Azuka's farm, their hands rough and backs aching, but they never complained because they knew their hard work would bring happiness to their family. Finally, after many days of hard work, the harvest was complete. The crops were neatly packed and stored in the barn. Ekon felt a sense of accomplishment and relief. He wiped the sweat from his brow and said to his sons, "We did it. Now let's go and get our payment from Chief Azuka." Ekon went to Chief Azuka and said, "Chief, we have finished the harvest. May we please have our payment?" Chief Azuka nodded and handed Ekon some money. "Here is 1/3 of what I owe you. Come back tomorrow for the rest," Chief Azuka said. Surprised, Ekon took the money and thanked the chief. When Ekon returned home, he gave some money to his wife and said, "Cook a delicious meal for the children tonight. They deserve it." That night, Ekon's wife noticed he was restless. She asked, "Ekon, why are you so moody? Did something happen at Chief Azuka's farm?" Ekon sighed and explained, "Chief Azuka did not pay me fully. He told me to come back tomorrow for the rest. I'm worried because he has never done this before." His wife hugged him and said, "Don't worry, Ekon. You have worked hard and everything will be fine. Let's enjoy our meal with the children tonight." Ekon nodded and tried to put his worries aside. He knew he had to go back to Chief Azuka the next day to get the rest of his payment. Despite his concerns, he remained hopeful and continued to focus on his family, who were his greatest source of strength and happiness. The following day, Ekon returned to Chief Azuka's house to collect the remaining payment for his hard work. As he approached the chief's grand house, Ekon felt a mix of hope and worry. He needed the money but was wary of the chief's unexpected generosity from the previous day. Chief Azuka greeted Ekon warmly. "Ah, Ekon, welcome back. Come sit with me. Let us share some food and drink," he said, gesturing towards a table laden with delicious food. Ekon hesitated but sat down as the chief's maid served him. The hospitality felt unusual, and Ekon couldn't shake the feeling that something was amiss. However, he decided to listen and see what Chief Azuka had to say. After they had eaten, Chief Azuka leaned back in his chair and said, "Ekon, you have worked hard all your life. You deserve more than just a few coins for your labor. I have an opportunity for you to become rich without all this hard work. You just have to see my old friend at the edge of the forest." Ekon was taken aback. "Chief Azuka, what do you mean? How can I become rich without working hard?" The chief smiled and replied, "There is a way, Ekon, a way that requires a small ritual but no bloodshed. You are getting older, and soon you won't be able to provide for your family through physical labor. Think about it." Ekon's heart raced. The idea of becoming rich without hard work was tempting, but he was also cautious. "I don't know, Chief Azuka. This sounds risky. What kind of ritual is this?" Chief Azuka reached into his robe and pulled out a large bundle of money. He handed it to Ekon and said, "Here, take this. It is 10 times the amount I owe you. Think of it as a gift, a small taste of what you could have. Take your time to decide. There is no rush." Ekon's eyes widened at the sight of so much money. He had never seen such a large sum in his life. He took the bundle with trembling hands and thanked the chief. "Thank you, Chief Azuka. I will think about your offer and let you know my decision." As Ekon walked home, his mind was filled with conflicting thoughts. The money in his hand felt heavy, and the offer weighed even heavier on his heart. When he arrived home, his wife saw the bundle of money and her eyes widened in surprise. "Ekon, where did you get all this money?" she asked. Ekon sighed and explained everything that had happened. Chief Azuka gave me this money and made an offer for easy riches. He said it involves a ritual but no bloodshed. I don't know what to do. It's so much money and it could change our lives. His wife listened carefully, her face full of concern. Ekon, this offer sounds too good to be true. We have always lived honestly and worked hard for what we have. Be very careful. Easy riches can bring great trouble. Ekon nodded, knowing she was right. I will think about it carefully. We must not rush into anything that could harm our family. That night, Ekon lay awake, staring at the ceiling. The money was hidden safely, but his thoughts were far from peaceful. He knew he had to make a decision soon, but he wanted to ensure it was the right one for his family. The promise of easy riches was tempting, but the unknown risks kept him cautious. Ekon spent the next few days wrestling with Chief Azuka's offer. The bundle of money was a constant reminder of the wealth that could be his. He thought about his family, his children's future, and the endless struggles they had faced. The temptation of an easy life was hard to resist. One evening, as the sun set, Ekon made up his mind. He decided to accept Chief Azuka's offer, hoping it would bring prosperity to his family. He told his wife, "I've made my decision. I will go to the forest's edge tomorrow and meet the old man for the ritual." His wife looked at him with worried eyes but nodded. "Ekon, please be careful. Our family's happiness means more than wealth. Promise me you will come back safe." Ekon hugged her tightly and promised, "I will come back safe. This is for our future." The next day, Ekon made his way to the forest's edge where the old man lived. The forest was dark and thick with trees that seemed to whisper secrets. Ekon's heart pounded as he approached the old man's hut. The old man with a long white beard and wise eyes greeted him. "Ah, Ekon, Chief Azuka told me you would come. Are you ready for the ritual?" the old man asked. Ekon nodded, his voice trembling slightly. "Yes, I'm ready." The old man led Ekon to a clearing in the forest. In the center of the clearing was a circle made of stones, and inside the circle were strange symbols drawn on the ground. The old man began to chant, his voice low and rhythmic, filling the air with an eerie feeling. Ekon stood in the circle, feeling a mix of fear and anticipation. The old man approached him with a small bowl of dark oil and said, "This ritual will grant you wealth without shedding blood. Rub this oil on your body and the gods will bless you." Ekon took the oil and with trembling hands began to rub it on his skin. The old man continued to chant, and the air around them seemed to shimmer. As Ekon applied the oil, he felt a strange warmth spread through his body. The old man then placed his hands on Ekon's head and said, "You have been chosen. The gods will grant you riches, but remember, there is always a price to pay. Be wise and use your wealth for good." With those words, the ritual was complete. The old man handed Ekon a small pouch filled with gold coins. "This is just the beginning. More will come to you. Go now and take care of your family." Ekon thanked the old man and left the forest, his heart filled with a mix of excitement and apprehension. When he returned home, his wife and children were waiting for him. He showed them the pouch of gold coins, and their eyes widened in amazement. "Ekon, is this real?" his wife asked, holding one of the coins. "Yes, it is real. The gods have blessed us," Ekon replied, hugging his family tightly. "Our lives will change for the better now." That night they celebrated with joy and hope. Ekon felt a sense of relief, believing that the dark decision he had made would bring happiness and prosperity to his family. Little did he know the true cost of his choice was yet to be revealed. In the days that followed the ritual, Ekon's life began to change dramatically. His humble home was soon filled with wealth beyond his wildest dreams. Gold coins, fine clothes, and beautiful ornaments adorned their once simple abode. Ekon, who had always been seen as the poorest man in the village, was now one of the wealthiest. The villagers were astonished. Everywhere Ekon went, people would stop and stare, whispering to one another about his sudden fortune. How did Ekon become so rich overnight? They wondered. Some speculated that he had found a hidden treasure, while others believed he had been blessed by the gods. Ekon's friends, who had once shunned him because of his poverty, now flocked to his side, eager to bask in the glow of his newfound wealth. They praised him, invited him to their homes, and treated him with the respect they had previously denied him. But Ekon remembered how they had treated him before, and was cautious in his interactions with them. At home, Ekon's family was overjoyed with their new lifestyle. His children wore fine clothes and had plenty of food to eat. They could now afford things they had only dreamed of. Ekon's wife, however, felt a mix of joy and concern. She loved seeing her family happy, but she couldn't shake the unease about the mysterious source of their wealth. One evening, as they sat together in their newly furnished living room, Ekon's wife turned to him and said, "Ekon, I'm happy that we have all these things now, but I am worried. How did this happen so quickly? Where did all this money come from?" Ekon took her hand and looked into her eyes. "The gods have blessed us, my love. They have seen our struggles and decided to reward us. I made a promise to them and they have fulfilled it. You don't need to worry." His wife sighed, still feeling a shadow of doubt. "I trust you, Ekon, but please be careful. Sometimes great wealth can bring great trouble." Ekon nodded, understanding her concern. "I promise I will always look out for our family. We have worked hard, and now it is our time to enjoy the blessings." As days turned into weeks, Ekon's wealth continued to grow. He invested in land, bought more livestock, and even started his own farm. The villagers' curiosity only grew, but Ekon kept the secret of his wealth close to his heart, sharing it with no one. Despite the luxurious life they now led, Ekon's wife kept a close watch on her husband. She noticed how he seemed more distant and preoccupied at times, as if a burden weighed heavily on his shoulders. She knew Ekon loved their family dearly, but she couldn't help but wonder if the price of their newfound wealth was higher than they realized. For now, the family enjoyed their prosperity, and the village buzzed with stories of Ekon's transformation. Little did they know, the true test of Ekon's choices and the price of his wealth was still to come. As Ekon's wealth grew, his old friends, who had once abandoned him due to his poverty, began to return. They were eager to be close to him again, drawn by his newfound riches. Every day, they would visit Ekon's house, showering him with praise and asking how he had become so wealthy so quickly. One afternoon, as Ekon sat in his grand living room, a group of his old friends came to see him. They brought gifts and spoke with exaggerated enthusiasm about how happy they were to see him doing well. "Ekon, old friend," one of them said, "we are so proud of you. You have achieved so much in such a short time. Please tell us your secret. How did you become so rich?" Ekon smiled politely, but felt uneasy. He knew that revealing the true source of his wealth would bring trouble. "I have been blessed by the gods," he replied. "They saw my hard work and decided to reward me." His friends exchanged glances, not entirely convinced. One of them leaned closer and said, "Come now, Ekon. We are your friends. You can trust us. There must be more to it than just divine blessings." Ekon maintained his calm demeanor. "It is the truth. The gods have been kind to me. I cannot explain it any other way." His friends were persistent. They visited him regularly, each time trying different ways to coax the secret out of him. They would flatter him, bring him lavish gifts, and even offer to share their own wealth in exchange for his knowledge. "Ekon, think of how much more we could achieve together," another friend suggested. "If you share your secret, we can all be wealthy and powerful." But Ekon remained firm. He knew that the secret of his wealth was not something he could share lightly. It was tied to a dark ritual, and he didn't want to drag anyone else into the dangerous path he had taken. "I appreciate your offers, my friends, but I must decline. I cannot share what is not mine to give, Ekon said. As time went on, his friend's persistence began to wane. They grew frustrated with Ekon's reluctance and started to distance themselves once more. Some even whispered behind his back, spreading rumors and speculation about the true nature of his wealth. Ekon felt the strain of their suspicion and the weight of the secret he carried. Despite the luxurious life he now led, he often found himself longing for the simple, honest days before the riches came. He missed the genuine companionship he once had, even if it was tainted by poverty. At home, Ekon's wife noticed his troubled demeanor. One evening, as they sat together, she gently asked, "Ekon, what is bothering you? I see the worry in your eyes." Ekon sighed deeply and said, "Our friends, they keep asking about our wealth. They do not believe it is just the God's blessings. I cannot tell them the truth, but their questions never stop." His wife squeezed his hand and said, "We must stay strong, Ekon. We have each other, and that is what matters most. Let them talk. As long as we know the truth, we can face anything." Ekon nodded, grateful for her support. He knew that the journey ahead would not be easy, but he was determined to protect his family and the secret of their wealth. The return of his friends had reminded him that true loyalty and love could not be bought, and he cherished the genuine bond he had with his family above all else. With his wife's reassurance, Ekon resolved to face whatever challenges lay ahead, knowing that their strength as a family would guide them through even the darkest times. One quiet evening, as the sun dipped below the horizon, a messenger arrived at Ekon's house with a message. The old man from the forest had summoned Ekon. The message was brief and ominous, causing a shiver to run down Ekon's spine. He knew that the old man's summons could only mean one thing: a demand. The next morning, Ekon made his way to the edge of the forest where the old man lived. His heart pounded with each step, dread gnawing at his insides. When he reached the old man's hut, he found the old man waiting for him, his expression grave. "Ekon," the old man said, his voice as ancient as the trees around them. "The time has come for you to fulfill your part of the bargain. The gods demand a sacrifice." Ekon's heart sank. "What kind of sacrifice?" he asked, his voice trembling. The old man looked at Ekon with piercing eyes. "You must sacrifice your only daughter Amina to the gods. It is the price for the wealth you have received." Ekon staggered back, his mind reeling with horror. "No, not Amina, she's my only daughter. I cannot do this." The old man's face remained impassive. "If you do not fulfill the god's demand, you will lose everything: the wealth, your sanity, and your life. The gods will take back their blessings, and you will be left with nothing." Ekon felt as though the ground had shifted beneath him. The thought of losing Amina was unbearable. She was the light of his life, kind and gentle, loved by everyone in the village. He could not fathom the idea of sacrificing her. "Please, there must be another way," Ekon pleaded, his voice breaking. "I cannot harm my daughter." The old man shook his head. "There is no other way. You have 7 days to make your decision. If you do not sacrifice Amina, the gods will take her themselves, and you will suffer the consequences." Ekon returned home, his mind a whirlwind of fear and despair. He couldn't share this burden with his wife. The thought of telling her was too much to bear. Ekon couldn't sleep. The old man's demand haunted him. Sacrifice Amina? How could he even think of it? Yet the threat was clear: refuse, and he would go mad, and his secret would be exposed. Ekon paced the floor, his mind in chaos. "I can't do this to my daughter," he whispered to himself, but the fear of losing everything gnawed at him. During the day, Ekon watched Amina play, her laughter piercing his heart. "She's my only daughter," he thought. But then the old man's voice echoed in his head. "You have 7 days, or the gods will take her themselves." Ekon tried to rationalize. "I still have 2 sons," he thought. "They can carry on the family name." He knew it was a terrible thought, but the fear of losing everything pushed him closer to making the unthinkable decision. His wife noticed his turmoil. "Ekon, what is wrong?" she asked, but he couldn't tell her. He just shook his head, muttering, "Everything will be fine." The days passed, each one heavier than the last. On the 5th day, with his heart breaking, Ekon finally decided to follow through with the ritual. The fear and the old man's threat left him feeling like he had no choice. He hoped somehow this terrible act would protect the rest of his family. But the decision tore at his soul, and he knew he would never be the same again. On the 5th night, Ekon's heart was heavy with dread. He prepared the drink and the black oil, as instructed by the old man. His hands shook as he mixed the concoction, knowing the terrible purpose it served. Ekon found Amina playing in their yard. "Amina, come here," he called softly. She ran to him with a smile, trusting her father completely. "Drink this, my dear, and use this oil. It's very important." Amina hesitated, but took the drink. "Okay, father," she said, trusting his words. She drank the potion and took the oil. As the potion took effect and Amina fell unconscious, Ekon's heart broke. He carried her to the forest, each step feeling like a weight on his soul. Ekon reached the clearing where the ritual was to take place. He laid Amina gently on the ground, her face peaceful and unaware of the horror about to unfold. He took a deep breath, his hands shaking as he prepared to complete the ritual by pounding her in the mortar that the old man had prepared. "I'm so sorry, Amina," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. He knelt beside her, the weight of his decision crushing him. Just as he was about to proceed, a piercing scream shattered the silence. "Ekon, no!" It was his wife, her voice filled with desperation. She had followed him, suspecting something was terribly wrong. The villagers, awakened by her scream, rushed to the forest, their torches lighting up the darkness. They found Ekon kneeling over Amina and quickly restrained him. His wife ran to Amina, tears streaming down her face as she cradled their daughter. "What have you done, Ekon?" she cried, her voice trembling with shock and grief. The villagers took Amina to the herbalist, hoping to undo whatever had been done to her. Ekon was left behind, his heart shattered by the enormity of his actions and the realization of what he had almost done. That night, Ekon was tied up and kept in his compound. The villagers guarded him, their faces filled with a mixture of anger and pity. Ekon's wife wept throughout the night, unable to comprehend how her loving husband could be driven to such a terrible deed. As the first light of dawn broke, the villagers gathered outside Ekon's home, murmuring in disbelief and anger. Amina had been taken to the herbalist, who was working tirelessly to reverse the effects of the ritual. Ekon's wife sat beside their daughter, her tears falling silently, her heart breaking for what her husband had almost done. The villagers' anger grew as they learned more about Ekon's actions. They couldn't understand how a man they had known all their lives could be driven to such a horrific deed. Their trust in him was shattered, replaced by a mix of outrage and sorrow. "Ekon must face justice," one of the elders declared. "We must take him to the king." Bound and surrounded by the villagers, Ekon was led to the king's palace. His head hung low, the weight of his guilt pressing heavily on his shoulders. The villagers whispered among themselves, their eyes filled with a mix of anger and pity for the man they once respected. In the grand hall of the palace, the king sat on his throne, his face stern and filled with disappointment. The villagers presented Ekon before him, explaining the terrible events of the night. "Ekon, is this true?" the king asked, his voice echoing in the hall. Ekon, weakened by the ritual's backlash, fell to his knees and confessed. "Yes, my king, it is true. I was manipulated by Chief Azuka. He promised me wealth if I performed a ritual, but I didn't know it would come to this." The king's eyes narrowed. "Chief Azuka, explain yourself." Ekon, with a trembling voice, recounted the events leading up to the night of the sacrifice. He spoke of the old man in the forest, the ritual, and the immense pressure and fear that drove him to such desperation. "The wealth came at a terrible price," Ekon said, his voice breaking. "Chief Azuka vanished after I accepted his offer. He knew what he was doing. He used me." The king listened, his expression growing darker with each word. He turned to his guards. "Find Chief Azuka. He must answer for his actions." But when the guards searched for Chief Azuka, they found that he had already fled the village, leaving behind only the chaos and destruction he had orchestrated. "Ekon, you have committed a grave sin," the king said. "But since you luckily did not take the life of your own daughter, thanks to your wife, I see the manipulation and fear that drove you. Your punishment will be severe, but your life will be spared. You will spend the rest of your days in prison, where your wife and children can come and see you often, but you'll work to atone for your actions." Ekon bowed his head, accepting his fate. "Thank you, my king," he whispered, tears streaming down his face. The villagers dispersed, their hearts heavy with the weight of what had transpired. Ekon's wife returned to the herbalist's hut, where Amina was slowly recovering. She knew their family would never be the same, but she held on to hope that they could find a way to heal. Ekon was led away to his prison cell, feeling a deep sense of regret. He had lost everything he had ever worked for, all for the promise of easy riches. The love and happiness of his family, once his greatest treasure, had been shattered by his own choices. In his cell, Ekon vowed to spend the rest of his life atoning for his sins, hoping that one day his family might find it in their hearts to forgive him. As Ekon lay in his cell, the sounds of the village echoing faintly in the distance, he found a measure of solace. He had paid a high price for his wrong choices, but he hoped that his story would serve as a lesson to others. The love of family and the integrity of one's character were treasures far greater than any amount of gold. Ekon's tale spread throughout the village, a reminder of the dangers of greed and the true meaning of wealth. Though he spent his remaining days in captivity, Ekon's heart found some peace in knowing that his family had forgiven him and moved on to live good, honest lives.